Hi, hello, uglies. Welcome back to another Dragula review of Season 666. We are on Episode 4. I was already planning this clown look for the Halloween season for my live Twitch streams, so don't mind the look. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about. Personally, this is my favorite episode of the season so far. I really loved the prompt. I liked the practical sets. I liked the runways. Everything about this episode felt so correct for what I was expecting for this season. It just took a couple episodes for these ghouls to really start building up steam, but I imagine that every episode past this is going to be spectacular. The Boulets opened up with what I thought was going to be a theme park challenge, and I got really excited. It kept sounding like they were making references to theme park attractions, and then it ends up being a train challenge, a ghost train challenge. So they can participate however they want. They can be a passenger, they could be the conductor, they could be literally any type of character in a train scenario. And we have so many stories of people getting on trains of all different decades. So there was a lot of places they could have gone with this. One of the references that I think about is like old time Wild West train hijacks. I think about Murder on the Orient Express. I think about a lot of different references, and this was a cool challenge to jump off of, and we get to see a lot of their personal style come out in a historical reference setting. In the beginning of the episode, the ghouls are trying to decide who's going to come back, and they universally kind of agree that Yuri's the one to return. They all seem to feel like Desiree was not quite right for this season, which I really liked Desiree. I thought she was really fun. I thought she had a lot to give. And her being a really big fan of the show, I think maybe was that effect where you're a little bit too excited to be on, that maybe you're not thinking as personal brand-like, that maybe you're thinking more, I know what this game is, so I know how to beat it. And so you're sort of catering to what the judges might want, and maybe not necessarily what is authentic to you. And I think, unfortunately, we did see that with Desiree. I think that they are a fantastic monster. I think they're so cool and have a really interesting style. It saddens me to see them go, but I do agree that Yuri was the right choice to come back, especially after Desiree had just been in the bottom the week before. It's sort of the rule of two. If you end up in the bottom again, it might be your time. If you didn't wake up and you land in the bottom again, the lesson didn't sink in, or at least that's the way that the Boulets generally judge it. So I was happy to see Yuri another week. Would I have loved to see Desiree? Absolutely. But I'm glad that Yuri gets another chance. I want to jump straight into the challenge because that was really the meat and the potatoes of this. They got some jewelry at the beginning. There wasn't really anything super wild about the beginning of this episode or fright feats that were crazy, which I appreciated a little bit of a reprieve. The Boulets like to do this every now and again where they'll tease us, make us feel like things are chill and that we're in a nice lull, and then bam, they get us with something. The one big storyline that I want to discuss before we talk about the floor shows is Majesty is having quite a bit of a shift in energy right now. Majesty is sort of coming across like, I don't think I should be here and I think I should leave. We're getting a very similar situation to Melissa in Titans, with the family storyline going on of their partner not being there, being in the competition maybe a little bit too soon, not really certain where they're at in the Dragula format, and sometimes that pressure of being back in a competition meets family things doesn't mix well. It creates a explosion that I don't think contestants are ready for because there are so many stimuli involved in a competition reality show. So we'll see what happens. I have a feeling that whatever the extermination was, Majesty went to the producers and said, you know what, I actually would like to leave. Please let them both come back, because I just want to go. This is not the right environment for me. That was very much the vibe that I was getting, because what the hell was that extermination? What was that? They didn't show a body. There was just a skeleton. What does that mean? And the way that Majesty's energy was in the cauldron saying, I would just be devastated if both of you went. I don't think I can allow you guys to leave. That worries me because I was really excited for Majesty, and I feel like they're not going to be here anymore. So let's get into these floor shows on this train, starting with Auntie Heroine, doing a very 1800s type of woman. To me, this is reading Red Dead Redemption, which I am loving. It's very much that old Western style woman with the side bustles and the fit of the dress, but the hair was giving a little Gibson girl, so it was kind of a little back and forth on references, but I enjoyed it. I think for period purposes, the breastplate and the length of the cleavage shot was a little inappropriate for the era, but I do like it because one could almost make an argument that this was a loose woman and that's why she was killed. I am a little confused why there was a magnifying glass, because is she supposed to be an assistant to a detective? I enjoyed it nonetheless. I thought it was a really solid, fun look. Just story-wise, I was confused. Next up is Asia Consent, and I gotta be completely honest, I didn't understand the story of this look. They mentioned wanting to look like flames. I did not quite understand the inspo and the point of reference here. I love Asia and I'm such a big fan, but this was a little bit of a miss for me because I'm not quite sure how she died. I'm not quite sure what she's referencing or what she's taking off of. And it's sort of hard because I love this ghoul and I want to see them succeed every week, but this was a more bottom look for me. Next up was Gray Matter, and I loved this. I understand what the judges were talking about by saying it looked a little more scare actor than a ghost. But to me, when I think about a ghost train, I think about a train robbing, I think about a train jacking, tight cinched waists and overcoats. I think about investigators solving a crime. There's a lot of different places my brain goes when I think haunted train. And this was perfectly on theme for what I wanted to see. Gray looks like a train jacker, like someone who was on their horse, on their way to shoot up the train, and along the way got shot by the sheriff and died on the tracks. That was the story I was getting. They legit looked like someone who was haunting the train, and there'd be this legend of Gunslinger Gray who haunts this train, and if you're out in train car C past 11 o'clock, you'll see Gunslinger Gray. He'll haunt you and chase you to your room. I thought it was brilliant. I understand though, the mouth movements and the teeth were a little distracting, but I thought it was a solid look. I didn't think this was bottom, as much as I thought maybe Asia's was. Next up was Majesty in what I thought was also another low look for me personally, para mí. I didn't really understand the reference point of where this was coming from. They start out with a prop that says detective dead on the case, so I immediately think, okay, they are a detective who was on the train investigating something. So then, okay, I see the tweed jacket and that's definitely reading as investigator. But then we have a wig reveal that didn't get a ton of coverage into a fishtail braid. And this fishtail braid reads very modern, post-1990s, and it clashes severely with this sort of 1920s tweed femme investigator look. But then it also looks like maybe they got stabbed by the railway stakes. So across the board, I have a lot of confusion about where this story is jumping off of. Next up was my favorite look of the evening, and that was Aurora Gosmic, doing what I could only extrapolate as like a 1940s lounge singer who maybe was on her way to New York to make it big in Broadway. I really love the shawl. I love the low-cut dress. It's very era appropriate for the hairstyle because the hair is definitely reading 1940s to 1960s, somewhere in that era. It's a little bit Marilyn Monroe. It's a little bit Elizabeth Taylor. I'm enjoying the references that are here, and it's just such a solid look. And yet there's also something sort of cowgirl about it too, because we've got this very sharp neckline with the tassels hanging off of it. It feels to me like in those old cartoons where the glamour girl of the group would dress appropriately for whatever they were doing. One detail the judges did not talk about was that Aurora has this purple line right across her neck, and the blood is seeping from here. To me, it almost looked like whatever killed her strangulated her first, and then she maybe got sliced open and started bleeding. The only prop detail that I didn't understand was why there was blood also on the suitcase, because the strangulation line was too big to have been the suitcase, and also the placement of the gems was not in the right spot. That was the only like, meh, if I'm nitpicking, but this was the best look of the night. Next out is Vivi the Force, and in my personal opinion, this was reading more Salem witch trial than someone who had been killed on or by a train. The makeup was really witchy, and so far a lot of Vivi's looks have read witchy, and I don't mind that. I think that's a solid point of view we don't get too often on Dragula. But being covered by the ropes around the body was a nice detail for a hostage situation. Someone who is captured and tied up on the tracks, and so they get run over and smooshed. But the ropes should be a different type of textile. This definitely read older, like at least a couple centuries. This read a little more 1600s rather than more in like the 1800s, where I think this idea and concept would have come from. This definitely looks like tie up the witch, burn her at the stake, plus the specific binding at the hands, also very witchy. So the look did not translate to me. Next out is Pi in probably the campiest, silliest look. And I agree with the Boulets. A lot of details about this was reading more 80s. The hair was very 80s divine. Like, this is reading You Think You're a Man divine. The strappy shoes are psychotic. I say psychotic in a good way. I don't mean it bad. But the makeup is fierce. I think the best element of this is the train track behind them, but I do agree that it looked like maybe they escaped. This was still a high look because I'm very here for camp. To me, this read like an 80s cartoon about someone who got killed by a train maybe 200 years before. Like, this looked like what they thought the past would look like through an 80s lens. I enjoyed that. It was silly. Next out is Jaharia in what I can only assume was maybe like a 1930s housewife going to pick up family from the train, or maybe on their way down to the south to go really connect with their Southern Christian roots. There were a lot of reference points that I was getting from this look. It very much landlocked itself into the 30s for me. I liked it. I don't understand how they died, but on some level I don't know if that matters too much because the look was really good. Jaharia is one of those performers who just very consistently is doing well. Maybe not executing the challenges perfectly, but it's just so solid and good, it's hard to fault it. Next out was Yuri in one of my favorite looks elementally from the night because of how much was going on here. To me, this dress read a little 1950s, which I don't hate. The silhouette of the neckline was a little more on the Cinderella scale, so it read princessy to me. I loved the makeup, the hair was stunning. The blindfold read a little more hostage situation, maybe someone who was captured and put on a train and taken somewhere else. I enjoyed this look immensely. It was so solid, and I'm glad that Yuri woke up because I was worried that they would maybe lose steam after having done all that, but hopefully their head is in the game and they don't leave it. So the groups also have to do a performance to the Boulets song Ghost Train. I loved this challenge. This performance challenge was brilliant. Jaharia, Pi, and Auntie's choreo was perfection. Aurora stood out in a way that I have not seen her stand out yet, so I loved that. So because of the floor show as well as the performance challenge, I thought both of those equaled out to, for me, Majesty and Vivi in the bottom. I was actually really surprised when Majesty was called safe. And Auntie was definitely a little more safe to me. So Vivi and Gray are now up for extermination, and they have to hold their fingers on this electrocution wire and just be zapped until the other one gives up. And I don't know if I could have done this. This is a lot of pain to go through, and I don't know if I would have the stamina to do it. But what the heck was the ending? I am very inclined, like I already said, to believe that Majesty dipped and said, you know what? Please don't send them home. Send me home, please. I need to figure things out. Maybe I'll audition again for season 7, but I've done what I needed to do and I'm ready to go. Or they both lasted so long that the Boulets contractually were like, you know what? We can't get rid of either one of them. These girls got so much zapping that they might have permanent brain damage. So let's just keep them for another week and give them some money or something. We will see what happens next week, but what did you think of this episode? This was one of my favorites, and I cannot wait to see where this train is taking us, because this episode, this departure was good. I'm glad to see that all the ghouls are really in the game right now. See y'all on the flip. Thank you so much for watching. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to click that like button. And if you want to see more, hit subscribe. Goodbye.